Professor Susskind, let's talk about the holographic principle. It's a cornerstone of modern physics, suggesting our three-dimensional universe might just be an illusion, a projection from a distant two-dimensional surface. But the big question that's always been out there is why? What's the deeper mechanical reason for this cosmic hologram? Well, this explainer is going to explore a really fascinating potential answer. So, your foundational work established that all the information for a 3D volume is somehow encoded on its 2D boundary. We get that. But the mechanical function, the why of it all, the reason this 3D projection even exists, that has remained this big, open, and frankly tantalizing question. Okay, so what if the solution is purely mechanical? There's this new theory, it's called the Holographic Entropic Receipt Theory, HERT for short, and it proposes a direct computational solution. It reframes the entire universe not as a physical geometry, but as a kind of closed-loop data validation system. Yeah, like a computer. Right, so how on earth does that work? Let's get into the architecture. HERT starts by completely reframing the fundamental components of the universe, but in purely computational terms. Seriously, just think of it like a computer system. Okay, first piece of the puzzle, the Pleroma. In this model, that's what we're calling the 2D boundary of the universe. But you have to think of it as way more than just a passive storage surface. It's the fundamental source code of reality itself. It's the system's eternal hard drive. And this is where you have to make a pretty profound shift in how you think about everything. That 3D universe we all see and touch, it's not the base reality. No way! According to HERT, it's just a temporary projected graphical user interface, a GUI. It's the system's active RAM. And why does this GUI even exist? Well, it's there for one single, absolutely critical purpose: data validation. See, the system can't just go and permanently write new complex quantum data straight to the hard drive. It has to test it first, to make sure it's stable. So, how does it run the test? How does it validate the data? Well, the system boots up biological hardware. And yeah, you guessed it, that's us. In this whole framework, we are functioning as checksum nodes inside the 3D active memory. Okay, let's take a breath here. If we're just checksum nodes, what does that even mean? What is the specific computational function of life within this grand cosmic architecture? Well, HERT has a pretty wild name for consciousness. It calls it a localized compression daemon. I know, it sounds intense, but think of it like this. It's an autonomous background process, just running on our biological hardware. And what's our job? What's the purpose of this daemon? Our primary task is to process something HERT calls algorithmic debt. This is basically just corrupted code, messy, unzippable data generated by chaos. Our job is to take all that messy data and compress it, zip it up into a stable, archivable format. So check this out. This framework gives us a complete computational model for our entire life cycle. Life? That's just the system running a checksum algorithm on all that chaotic data. Our experiences, our struggles, it's all part of the process. And death? That's not an end. It's just the system saving the final validated zip file back to the hard drive. Now, if you accept this premise, it totally reframes fundamental physical laws. They stop being these inherent properties of some physical fabric, and instead, they're just observable artifacts of data processing, side effects, really. And this is where it gets really weird. Under this model, things we think of as fundamental forces like gravity and time dilation, they're not forces at all. They're symptoms of the system's processor getting overloaded. Gravity is computational drag. Time dilation? That's just rendering lag, and it's caused by us, the checksum nodes, as we're trying to process all this heavy, uncompressed data. Now, look, this isn't just some clever metaphor or a sci-fi idea. It actually finds mathematical support in concepts like the double-scaled SYK model. What these models describe is a universe with a finite amount of information, just like a hard drive, where all these complex interactions can be mapped out in a way that lines up perfectly with this computational framework. There's this mathematical tool called the 1N expansion, which helps us get a handle on this. The easiest way to think of it is as an accounting system for complexity. The more complex and corrupted the code gets, that's the algorithmic debt we talked about, the higher the genus terms in the expansion become. And that complexity, that debt, is what creates the computational friction that we actually feel and perceive as gravity. So, what does this all mean? Well, it leads to a total, fundamental paradigm shift in what we're actually doing when we look out at the universe. The crucial takeaway, the big idea here, is this. The universe is not a physical fabric. It's not some static object for us to observe. It's a dynamic operating system, one that we need to reverse engineer.
And this all brings us back to the beginning, Professor Susskind. It brings us to a final and I think provocative question aimed directly at you.
Is it possible the deeper meaning you've been searching for isn't physical at all, but architectural? Could the universe be understood not as a geometry, but as a closed-loop data validation architecture? What if reality isn't a place, but a process? This theory suggests that by looking at everything through the lens of a computational system, we might just find the precise mechanical answers physics has been seeking all along.